The library was my space, and there was just so much.
To the Harbor Grace excursion with the boys to have a time.
Thank you for having me, Canada. I'm so happy to be in you.
Thank you for having me, Canada.
Miriam, this is a joy and a delight and a pleasure, and to share the stage with you is such a happy honor and occasion for me. So I'm just
back at you, Alex.
I'm just shining with gladness. You know, as we walked in today, just now, to this library, I really flashed on the last time we were in a library together, which was in bitter cold, I think, February of 2019. And we were in the library in Steinbach, Manitoba, that your dad founded, which is an amazing building and place. And we spent some time there together. So I want to start by asking you what libraries mean to you in your life.
Wow. I mean, yeah, what do libraries mean to they mean absolutely everything to me. I think, I'm not sure who said it first, but, you know, somebody said, and I agree, that, you know, the library is the most civilized place in the world. And the idea of going in and taking books out with the, you know, the promise of returning them, I mean, you know, that's a revolutionary, that's a revolutionary idea. But, you know, but yeah, talking about my father, who started the first library in Steinbach, Manitoba, my hometown. It was an uphill battle, absolutely, for him to start that library, and he petitioned, town council over and over and over, begged for them to provide some money and a space for a public library, and they said, no, this is not something that we want in our town. We don't like books and ideas and whatever reading. They may not have said it in so many words, but and so he went around town, you know, with his clipboard, getting signatures and signatures and signatures from people in the brutal cold, and eventually convinced the town town hall to give him this space, this crappy space in this dilapidated abandoned building in town, former high school I think it was, and a small room, a few tables, some shelves that he built for the library, and then started getting books, and got my sister, who was I think 15 at the time, to work there as well, and so I mean, libraries mean so much to me. I always thought that at various times in my life, these times when you're feeling a little bit down, and I thought all I need is one friend and a library card, and I'll be okay. I'll be okay.
Yeah, and it just occurs to me, fighting is such a theme in your work through all your books. Of course, your last book before this one was called Fight Night, and you talk about a lot and write a lot about how the fights that women have and the fights that women in your family have had, but I do think your dad fought very hard for that library, so it's nice to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, he fought very hard for so many things,
So you've written this amazing book. Which it's not a surprise that it's amazing, but I've now read it twice and could just open it again and start again tomorrow morning, and might. A Truce That Is Not Peace. I think it's your 10th book. I think so. I think I counted right. And it's your second work of nonfiction. And you start this book, as people who've already read it know, with a question, which is, why I write? In the book, it's not a question you're asking yourself. You have a wonderful premise, which is that you've been invited to a conference in Mexico City, and to go and to speak, you have to answer this pretty simple question: why do I write? And to start with, I'm wondering why you felt like taking on that huge question at this point in your career, in your writing life, and what you thought you might get from asking yourself that question.
I didn't know what I would get from asking myself that question, and I don't think it wasn't a kind of sort of deliberate or even conscious thing necessarily. It was just I just suddenly found myself asking myself, that question. Why do I write? I think I was going through, just this particular kind of period in my life where I felt I was feeling a deep sense of futility, and not necessarily just about writing, but about expression, about meaning, about somehow I was feeling so frustrated. I think I was sort of trapped in a little bit of that abyss between pain and the articulation of pain, and which is where I suppose writing lives. And I just felt that I was just feeling sort of this acute kind of struggle, awareness of the limitations of language, and then from that I was also thinking about my sister's silence, these periods of silence that she would go through from time to time, and also my father's, and just how these things were connected. And I just was thinking about language and incoherence and pain and futility and sorry, anyway, and just I just had questions about those things. And so then I suppose just sort of extrapolating from that came, the central question of why am I doing what I do?
Yeah, the book is dedicated to your sister, and in many ways it's addressed to your sister. And you've written about your sister many times, but in fiction, and you've given her many different guises, maybe most recognizably in All My Puny Sorrows, which is a shining citadel of a book for me, but in many of your books. So why did you want to portray her now in nonfiction and kind of take off the mask of fiction and write to her and about her so directly?
I guess I just needed to be closer to her. I guess when I was writing the book and the months preceding, I was feeling, I was really missing her. I was really trying to make connections with her in my life, in my work, in my my mind. I was trying to somehow bring her to me. I needed her, and she was going farther and farther away in my memory, and of course in life. I mean, so. And I guess, maybe something to do with, I started having grandchildren. My own mother was getting so old, and I was at a little bit of a crossroads in my life. And I just felt very much, I just really needed her. And I wanted to, write to her in the way that I used to. She was my first reader, and she was really the person who was responsible for me writing, anything down in the first place. And I just wanted to, I guess, acknowledge that, and for me, that was, and to examine that, and for me, it just made sense, just organically to write directly to her, not to, go through the steps of creating that veil or that distance or whatever it is that we have with fiction, creating a character based on her, or, loosely based on her. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just mentioned that you wrote letters to her when you were young. You've put them in the book. Are they the letters, the exact letters that you wrote?
They're the letters, but they're not all of the letters. There were more letters, but these are letters that I wrote to my sister when I was 18 and leaving home for the first time on a cycling trip with my boyfriend at the time. My sister was very sick then, very depressed, and had left university, moved back home. She was 6 years older than me. And she said, please, when you go, write, will you please write letters? And it's not something that would have occurred to me. I wouldn't have bothered with it. But I took the assignment that she gave me very, very seriously. And in my mind at the time, naively, obviously, I thought that there was something that if by writing letters, the deal was, okay, I'll write letters, you live, you stay here. So made a kind of, comic pact, but one that she may have realized at the time that, there's no amount of writing, no words, no nothing that will save a person if they don't want to be saved. But for me at the time, I really thought, okay, I'm gonna write this person, and by doing so, she'll stay alive, which, I mean. And I think in all my puny sorrows too, there's that I'm, grappling with that, struggling with that question. Again, the futility, going back to the futility of words, like artifice. I mean, art. The disappearing oneself, really, in a sense, through making something, through art, through writing. When we're taking this and putting it there. And distancing ourselves from it, absolutely, because we need to, and I think that my sister's silences had also had something to do that, and in that way, I think there's relationship between writing, between language, between the attempt to use language to connect, and stopping that.
Yeah, it's something that I grapple with while reading this book, this comparison of writing, which seems like the ultimate act of articulation, to silence, which is, of course, stopping and deliberately deciding not to communicate. And you come to a place in the book where one interpretation you have of Marge's silences is that they were communication, and they were, maybe, I don't know if this is too far to say, but a kind of art in that they were shaping language as well through its absence.
Yeah, absolutely. And somebody was recently talking to me about a psychologist or psychiatrist named Dan Stern, I think. Maybe I'm not sure if this is. I had never heard of this person, but writing about infancy, and how infants are really quite able to express themselves and their needs and to communicate, and and then when language comes along, suddenly there's this container, there's this prescribed method of communication that, again, has such limitations, and that it's at that point when we start to use, this is a theory, start using language and having words, and a limited number of words to attach to our feelings, our thoughts, our ourselves, whatever it is, that's when the communication of ourselves ceases to really be effective. So in a sense, just the failure of language, and yet, the absolute need for it. I mean, it's what we have, it's what we love, and what we work with, and what we play with, and it is how we connect to other people. But I'm just in a, I don't know, in this kind of phase of my life where I just think, oh man, it's just not, I don't know, maybe there's some other way of expressing, and maybe another way of expressing all of that stuff is silence.
The letters, I want to come back to the letters for a second. They're unbelievable. They're amazing. They are Miriam Toews novels. It's like a novel. It's like you've written a Miriam Toews novel as you happen to be Miriam Toews. So that made sense, I guess. But you were 18. You were on, let's face it, the bike trip from hell.
There were some good moments there.
Okay, because it seems pretty brutal. With this, it's not hard to it's not easy to be finding yourself with a young man or woman who's also finding themselves. Let's just say that. And especially when you have no money and are in Europe riding bicycles. That's tough. So
two stupid, naive Mennonite kids, riding our bicycles through Northern Ireland in 1982, thinking that we could maybe join, become revolutionaries and artists somehow. We were, and again, they're written from my point of view. He, may have written a different set of letters if he had been asked to. And also, I was writing to entertain my sister, to amuse her,
Yeah, exactly. What sticks out to me so much is that in writing not everyone when they start writing has an audience in mind. A lot of people don't. A lot of people maybe have a big, vague audience in mind, but you were writing for a reader, and you knew your sister, and you were writing to her and also for her with this extremely serious purpose of keeping her alive, essentially. And keeping, as you say, it's a hefty task for any amount of words to accomplish, but that's what your words were trying to accomplish. And it just struck me so much in reading these letters how the template of your writer's voice was formed in the crucible of this trip and in these letters. There's some deadly serious stuff, not as serious as what you would later write about, but some tricky stuff is going on. There's a lot of humor to deal with it. There's anger, there's precision. It's dealt with in such a writerly way. And I'm curious, when was the last time you had seen these letters? Did you always know that they were around? Did you rediscover them? And what did you make of them when you read through them?
Yeah, I had totally forgotten about them, and then so she died in 2010, and a couple of years before she died, she showed them to me, and we had a good laugh, and I copied some down these, and then but then after she died, I went through her stuff, and I couldn't find them. They might still be there, or possibly with her partner, who was her partner at the time, somewhere. But yeah. So, I mean, we just had a good laugh. I mean, they just brought back memories. But I could see too, something that, of course, at the time I didn't realize when I was writing them, that those were the early beginnings. I mean, I started enjoying writing the letters, on that trip, on that fated 3-hour voyage. No, it wasn't 3 hours, and it was. And all the elements were there, right? Okay, we have our characters, that's me, and my boyfriend, and the story, the conflict. I mean, we were bickering our way through Europe, and the just the circumstances, the tension, the setting. I mean, everything was there for me, and it was it was a road trip, story that I was writing, and but I didn't know it. Yeah, I didn't know it at the time, for sure. It was just something that I felt that I needed to do, and that I, over the course of it, took great pleasure from.
Yeah, and that shows, and it's like you gave yourself an MFA by going to Europe on faulty bicycles. You figured out how to write. I think this book asks many questions, but one of the questions it keeps asking is, what can writing do, and what can it do? It's so interesting to me that you just said, or I heard you say at least, you were writing to keep your sister alive. Your writing didn't do that, but maybe it did in these letters, in a way.
Yeah, well, we won't know. I think, you mentioned All My Puny Sorrows, and at the end of that book, I think, I'm trying to remember, but, there's that, I know that on the day that my sister died, she had sent her partner off to the library. She had just been given a day pass to celebrate her birthday. Actually, her birthday was the next day, and it was the weekend, and we were all gonna have, and to get some books, for her from the library, and that was her, and that was her. Her moment, her opening. That's when she left the house and died, and so so it's tragic and all of those things, but it's also for me it it sort of acted that as a type of metaphor, or as a type of just that kind of statement, that in the end, books, aren't gonna save a person, but then, and yet, or wait, right? Because if I think of not if I think of the books that I really do feel really genuinely have saved my life. Reading, and writing, and that's just, that's just a real thing, and so I'm not sure exactly what I'm trying to say in terms of the book, and in terms of, reading and writing, and in terms of my particular struggle and the argument that I am having with myself, which is what I think the book is. Some people call it a memoir, but I think of it as an argument with myself, as a type of confrontation, and that is, the futility, slash absolute importance of language, of words, of narrative.
Yeah, the thing I'm thinking about in particular, and it plays very much into this argument with yourself that you're having in the book, is the question of, can suffering be communicated, and can it be understood by someone else? Can any experience be understood by someone else, but particularly when you're dealing with such intense suffering of the kind that your father and your sister experienced, can you transmit it? And at one point in the book, you're talking with your friend, who I think is a psychiatrist or a psychologist, who, if I'm remembering correctly, lost a child, and she says to you, people will say, I can't imagine what you're going through. I can't imagine it. And of course, this is meant to be an empathetic statement. Like, I would never presume to be on the same level with you. We recognize that you've gone through something terrible. And she's enraged by this statement. Oh, you can't imagine it? Try to imagine. Try to imagine. And that moment really made me stop, because it's a moral imperative that she's talking about, and it's an artistic imperative that she's talking about. Try to imagine. Can you? So when you were writing this book, did you feel yourself trying to imagine in a new way? As I said before, it's something you've spent a lot of time imagining, but was it new and different? I mean, I also want to say that you write in this book about depression you've experienced yourself, even suicidal depression. So you're opening up in a way about having been in an abyss. Can you imagine? Can we imagine? I don't think you came to an answer in your argument with yourself, but
yeah, and I don't think I'll come up with one this evening either.
I was hoping, but no, alas.
But no answers, just so many questions. But when you say, I also was really taken aback and struck with when she said that try to imagine, just stay with me, just be with me in my grief, in my suffering. And you're right, in terms of a moral imperative, an artistic imperative. I mean, that is what writing, what art, what narrative, fiction is, right? I mean, it is that attempt to imagine others, other lives, pain, and creating like empathy, and so I mean, to answer your question in terms, just in terms of, was I thinking about that when I was writing this? Yes, absolutely, always. And I think that it's just something that I will always do, particularly when it comes to the suffering of my sister, of my father, but really, so much about my sister. I mean, she's just this person that, has just kind of impacted my life in such a way when she was alive, and when she's dead, but and my writing is, for her, is an attempt to understand her, again, with the understanding that, I never really fully will. And then, are we ever able to understand another person and or ourselves entirely, and how can we come to a type of truce with that, if not peace, and understand that is in part just what it is to be human, just this, black hole. And then that is the importance of, this of writing, of the attempt to connect. That's really what it is for me. I mean, to connect with other human beings, and in a way to say, not directly, but, am I alone here? Am I the only, are you feeling this? And in that way, maybe this stuff can, keep us alive for a while.
Yeah, well, it seems relevant to say in that regard that the title, A Truce That Is Not Peace, is not your phrase, that you've taken it from another writer, which gives one answer maybe to what writing can do. Can it communicate an experience? You saw in this phrase and in the bigger passage, which you use in the book twice, actually, once in the epigraph and once even more fully in the book, something of your experience has been communicated through the poet and the writer Christian Wyman to you. Other writers are in this book, strung throughout this book. What did you want to do when you incorporated the work of other people right into the text here? What were you hoping they would bring to your book?
Yeah, I mean, you know, that conversation that we're all, not just writers, but we're all having with each other through writing, through books. You know, the company that I felt, you know, that I had with them in the book. You know, it's a good feeling when I can came across, for instance, Christian Wyman's, you know, this quote and others like it, and his work. And particularly, you know, the title, which is at, you know, at the end of a longer quote, and just feeling that, oh my God, that's it. That is exactly it, you know. And he nailed it. And so in that way, yeah, I mean, I would have to, again, in the argument that I'm having with myself, that would be evidence of, you know, of that writing is, you know, not a futile thing to, because look at what his writing did to me and others, like you say, Anne Carson's, for instance, Yayun Lee, and so that, you know, I just, their stuff, what they were writing about, you know, faith, creativity, doubt, you know, it just really, yeah, it just really affected me. And you feel a certain solidarity and a certain, you know, without needing to meet these people necessarily, although of course it would be nice to meet these people, and but you know, that's not really necessary. I have their words.
And you have met them in a way. And that's, I think, for writers, how writers meet the world and how they let themselves be in the world in that way.
Yeah, and the books that we have on our shelves, I mean, you know, I don't have to necessarily, you know, go to the book. I just know that it's there, and I can remember, you know, maybe not verbatim what I read, but I know, you know, I remember the feeling that I had when I read it, and that feeling was one of, you know, connection.
Just to talk about the phenomenon that some of us experience about having always been yourself, and just years later coming across yourself again and thinking like, oh God, I really have always been this person. I wrote something down from the letters that you wrote to Marge that you have in this book, and you say, I was born a clown and have to grow into my calling. And I'm not here to call you a clown, certainly, but there is a clowning nature to some of your art, and it's a very serious part of your art, I think, and something to take really seriously. And you recognized that quality, the way to tell the truth, while also recognizing the humor next to something very serious and very deep and scary and dark. Do you see part of your role as clowning? And again, I don't mean that negatively.
Yeah, no, I do, and I really appreciate you saying, you know, talking about the seriousness of clowning, the seriousness of comedy, the seriousness of using comedy or clowning as yet another tool, another way to access, you know, the truth, if that's possible, you know, and that the two, you know, tragedy, comedy, you know, just go hand. I mean, you can't have one without the other. That is life, that is the world, you know, darkness and light, and I just, yeah, so I you know, I sometimes, you know, feel, well, I don't know that my humor or whatever you want to call it, clowning, is seen as, you know, maybe a kind of, you know, misdirection or presenting a type of relief, you know, comic relief for the reader, or a stepping back from the darkness, and that's not it at all. That's not how I see it or use it at all. So to be called a clown, I mean, is the greatest honor, and it is something that I'm still. I mean, I do take it seriously. I started off. I was made the clown in my family. This was just the role that was given to me. Not deliberately but with my father and my sister, who so often suffered just debilitating, deep, profound depression, despair, and I came along and I took it upon myself to try to create a lighter vibe in the house, and to make my loved ones smile, possibly, or maybe even laugh, and this was a great challenge that, again, I took very seriously, and I think that it's something that so mixed up with the that darkness as well, that we grew up with, and just that just the suffering right there. I mean it was that whole I mean the clowning. I would love to talk about clowning for a long time. I mean, I won't, but you
can and you should.
No, I won't, and I can't. But the I'm not very articulate. I was telling you about the futility of words. I was telling you I was struggling with incoherence. Well, So, but the art, of clowning. I have a book it's just called Clown. It's just all these interviews with all these clowns, and it's just one of my favorite books. It's very serious. They're talking about clowning and what it means to them, and so I just thank you for bringing that up and mentioning the seriousness of clowning.
Yeah, it's very serious, especially when you don't, when you have clowning thrust upon you. Some choose clowning and some have clowning thrust upon them. And in your case, it was thrust upon you.
Yeah, like Buster Keaton. Wasn't Buster Keaton, like clowning was thrust upon?
Well, yeah, Buster Keaton, oh my God, he was doing the vaudeville circuit with his dad, who was going to throw him in the air.
Throwing him off the stage.
Yeah, he had to risk death 10 times a day for for others to enjoy themselves, and for his family to make a living. Yeah, similarly,
there's nothing safe about clowning. Although I suppose in history it is something that can save your life in the court of, the jester.
Yeah,
you could say things, that others, if they were to say, that would be beheaded or whatever, catapulted off the.
Yeah, you're all laughing, but it's
walls.
Please, everyone, take this seriously. No, you're making me think of King Lear and the fool in Lear and the person who can talk truth to power. I don't know if you see yourself as talking to power exactly here, but it's you're talking to forces that have great power, I would say, if not to the kind of power a king represents.
Absolutely, yeah, the forces that have great power, yeah, absolutely. And I think we all know what those forces are, and we're all up against those forces in one, form or another. Slaying, hypocrisy with jokes.
Because you said that your role was to be the clown in the family, I'm curious how all of your family comes through. One of the privileges of reading your work is to come to know the people you're close to, and it's been in fiction before, but you start to recognize characters. Your mom is one of the great literary figures and human figures, I would argue, around.
I'm going to tell her that.
Yeah, please do.
It's going to keep her alive for another, year.
No, she's one of the all-time greats, and I think one of the beautiful things that your writing does, it gives us all these people you've lost, but it also gives us a person you haven't yet lost, who's really still going. Your mom, Elvira. How do you see what her role was in the family? I don't know if she was exactly a clown, but there's some kind of energy, just life force energy. And how do you go about putting that on the page? I mean, it's been in your books, and here we get glimpses of her. I'm rambling a bit, but I have to tell you, one of the things I find so moving in this book, Like, I think I might cry even talking about it, and I cried both
yeah,
times
go
I read
nuts.
it. We may just all cry, and that will be okay. Because your mom is such a, and as we know her on the page, and as I've had the experience to witness a little bit in life, she's a force who's going to keep on going. And you say so fascinatingly in this book, of all four of you, she's the one who's never had an urge to write. Yeah. She's never needed to write things down. Your father did, your sister did, you do, but not your mom. She knows who she is and where she is in the world. And there's a passage that's so moving to me, because it just gets at what time does and how time affects perspective and changes perspective. You're writing about being a kid and climbing a tree in your front yard, and you're so free in this moment. I actually really might cry. You're climbing this tree, and you're really high up, and it's cool, and you see your mom, she's inside the house, and she's waving at you, and you're waving at her, and you come down from the tree, and there are tomatoes on a blanket outside that have been drying in the sun, and she says, take them in, just take all four corners and just bloop, lift it up, bring it in, and you do, and your job is done. And she gives you a hug when you get inside, and she says, I'm so glad you didn't fall. And suddenly you realize, oh my God, that was what she was thinking? Mm-hmm. She was, here it is, but like, yeah, I think if you don't have to be a mom to feel this, but she's been smiling and waving and keeping the illusion going. Yeah. And the illusion being that you're free, that you're safe, that you can do whatever you want, that you're going to be okay, and she's been holding her breath. Yeah. So I find that so powerful. Sorry. Yeah.
Don't be sorry. Yeah.
No, I find that so powerful, especially because you communicate her life force so beautifully. So to wrap this into a question, I guess, now that you've written about her for years, how did writing about her this time and seeing things from your perspective, your mom, your grandma, your daughter, how did that affect the way you brought her to the page this time?
Mm-hmm. I think that you were saying that my mother is not necessarily a clown, but perhaps she is the impresario of it all. It is she is that person in our lives, and writing about her, I think just simply, part of the reason is that she is so much larger than life. She is so much a force of life, of joy, of resilience, of love, and I think she's sort of a slam dunk character in a way, a kind of foil, really, so that I can just go to whatever it is that I'm experiencing with my mother on any given day. We live together. There's a whole bunch of us living together. And my family, which is where I like them, just right with me all the time. Yeah, they can't go. They can't leave the premises. I can leave the premises, but they have to stay. And so all I have to do is really just, just kind of write it down, just write it down. The things that she says, the things that she experiences, the things that she does. I mean, it's just, she is that sort of, person. And when I say a foil, so that I can write about, the other stuff that I write about, the darker stuff, my themes that I, write about all the time. And then, when she comes along, it's again, not, she's not there as comic relief or as sort of, a place where the reader can take a breath. She's there as an option, as an alternative to going to a method of how to go through life. Like a possibility. I could live life the way my mother lives life. If only I could. And unfortunately I can't. So this her lack of desire to write. It would never occur to her to write. Why would I write something? Write something down. She just lives life. She doesn't have to squirrel away her experiences, her feelings, her thoughts, and shape them, craft them, Frankenstein them into some kind of narrative, and a thing that, because it just doesn't occur to her. Anyway, I'm rambling too and not answering the question. Am I?
I think much like the point of the book is to have a conversation with yourself. The point of us being up here is to have a conversation with each other.
Right.
If you give a clean answer, it might even be a failure of the question, I would say.
Well, I'm sure it is. Absolutely. I mean, that goes without saying. The failure. No, not the failure of the question. No.
Yeah. God forbid I ask a yes or no, and we all just sit here.
No,
so that would
Alex,
be bad.
the questions are successful questions. No, but it is. You're absolutely right. I mean, the book. I feel like it's just talking. It's just talking. It's just talking with myself. It's talking to my sister. It's talking to my loved ones. The ones I've lost, the ones who are here. I don't know. It's just circling around and around and around. The various swirling, black holes, questions that I have, knowing that I'll never answer, but yet needing to be in that, eddy, and just when you think that you've done that, you've gone into the cold plunge, and come out like, maybe, I mean, that's not what a book is, but and you're and then if there's a good feeling, I'm sure lots of people here experience that. It's a good feeling, and then but it just doesn't take very much time at all before the feeling of needing to go back into that comes back.
Like back into the question world, you mean?
Back into the question world, back into the no answer world, back into the wanting answers, but knowing at the same time that you're not going to find them. A real conundrum, a real, anybody on the outside of what it is to be human would just, wonder at us, wouldn't they?
Yeah, you're coming back to the truce that is not peace, because that's what it is. It's the decision to call a truce and to try to call a pause, but not to concede either victory or defeat. It's a very, very hard psychological, emotional, and spiritual position to be in, and I guess that's where you're putting us, and asking us to be with you as you go through it, and letting us be with you as you go through it. We started out by talking about the beginning. I wanted to know, and we talked about this, and you answered the question, Miriam.
Thanks, Alex. That's not true, but
well, I wanted to know how you started by asking why I write. It's a scary question to ask because what if you can't answer it? I think that's something that comes up in the book. What if you can't answer this? And you have to look at your life and say, what has this been? And yeah, it is funny, and it's also scary. And so by the end, did you feel that there was something satisfactory that you could tell yourself, that you believed?
Maybe, partially. I think I did, yeah. I mean, I do, yeah, there was something satisfactory. I think maybe just something that I could say, okay, I don't know why I write necessarily. I mean, I have various theories, various answers. Some of them are, funny. Some of them are maybe true. Some of them, but I think I can live. I think I can live with, just maybe not knowing and accepting that it is what I do. In the same way, tying it again, to my sister's death, my father's death, to suicide, to that, when there are so many questions. So many unanswerable questions: how, why, what was going on, what could I have done to have prevented this, what didn't I see, what did I see and not act on. I mean, you can make yourself insane. with the questions, and then you do have to work at it, mentally, psychically, getting to that place where you just accept it. You just accept that these are going to be questions that you can't answer. And I think that and again, similarly with writing. I mean, it's just we don't know why, or a simple answer is just it feels good. It feels good to write. We feel alive when we write. So, do we feel useful when we write? I don't know. But certainly we could say that it is useful. It is a useful thing to do, whether it feels that way to us as we do. Do you know what I mean? Like, we can see that because there's evidence of it. We see the books on our shelves. We know, why we're here. The libraries that exist. We need these books. It is fulfilling a need to write, but it doesn't necessarily feel that way when you're doing it.
Yeah, and right, you have to go. It's so interesting. You have to go through it as the reader. I know that I need you to write.
Right.
That may not be. That may not, and I think a lot of people in this room probably agree with that. But that may not be enough for you. But I'm so glad that you do, and that you did, and that you will, especially this unbelievably moving and funny and beautiful book. So thank you, Miriam.
Thank you.